Hello, welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor Live. I'm Darlene, and we are doing Luminar Neo editing this week. So if you are new here, welcome. And I'm going to be editing subscriber submitted images today. If you would like to participate, this is a link that you can submit your images along with any questions that you may have. And I can download your images and give them an edit. So what I'm going to be demonstrating today is how to use Luminar Neo for various different things. We've got some cool landscape images and a couple of other things. So I'm going to hop over to Luminar Neo and get started. Okay, Rob, we need new music because we got the same music on both the countdown and that one. So how's everybody doing? Do we have some regulars in the house? Stephanie, Sheila, Danelle, welcome everybody. Danelle's looking forward to this. Boca Raton. Is this your first one attending, Danelle? I think I've seen your name before. And Marty, you see that I have your bird images in here as well. I got those. Marty and Madison. Awesome. Welcome, everybody. So if you haven't already watched it, I did do an update, a video on the most recent update, which was the Luminar Neo 1.0.6. If you aren't sure if you're up to date, just use the menu to check for updates. So you can see this one here. Oh, let me just turn on my little mouse cursor highlighter. Right, so I'm using 1.0.6, and I did do a video about what was new in here, and you'll probably see some of those things today because they added a histogram and also finally some of the masking tools, including AI masking that many of us were waiting for. Okay, so love to hear from you in the chat for those of you that are already joined in. Are you using Luminar Neo specifically? And if so, what do you think? What's your favorite feature of Luminar Neo so far? Or what's your favorite tool, right? People watching as a regular will know that I have a couple of favorites, which is Mystical, and I'm quickly getting to really like the color harmony tool as well. Winnipeg, welcome, Bob. Thanks, Danelle. Yes, I thought I recognized your name. Bob from Winnipeg. How's the weather down there? Hopefully we're getting spring across the country soon. So I'm going to start with some landscape images that I've had for a little while. These have come in from, these actually came in, whose is this one? I forget now. I think this one. Let me just see. I have to go look on my list here because it's not showing me the whole file name. Give me a second here. This one, Monument Valley. Oh, this is yours as well, Marty. Okay, I thought so. All right, so this is Marty's edit. Okay, so that was what he has done with it. And this is the original. Okay, so I'm just going to walk through, and I'm probably not going to end up much different than what you did, Marty, but I want to just walk through how I approach the editing, what I will do on this one, and why. Okay, so sunset image, you've got now the histogram showing at the top here above the crop tool. If you don't see it and you want to turn it on, just go up to view and then histogram. And of course, if you choose that again, it will hide it. Okay. So the histogram gives you an idea of where the pixels fall in your picture. And I did a video on using the histogram as well. So if you could share the link to the update video, please, Rob, and also the one on the histogram, you can take a look at those. They're short, so 5-10 minutes, and you can get an idea of a little bit more information on how to use the histogram. Okay, you can see here that it is actually red, green, blue, and if you click on it, you can actually see the histogram for each channel separately. Okay, also there's a grayscale one. Okay, and then the overall. You can also turn on the clipping warnings. right? Using either these little circles here, or I'm pressing the J key on my keyboard. So what that tells me is there's a little bit of clipping in the dark areas, but the highlight areas are really good. So the sky is not over exposed or blown out. So that's the biggest concern in terms of a sunrise or a sunset, okay? Is this, tell us, Marty, is this a sunrise or a sunset? I'm not seeing the time on this one as to when it was shot. Okay, I'm guessing sunset, right? And you said this was Monument Valley. That's Utah, is it? I think. Oh, sunrise. Okay, I'm looking at the name of his file, and it is sunrise. So cool. So the first thing, it looks like I already did some edits here, but I'm just going to undo everything if I did any edits, and we'll go back to the original image here. Just trash those. Okay, so there's the original image. So I'm going to start with develop. And this is a JPEG. So I don't have the raw file on this one. So we'll see how far we can take it. But usually with the raw file, you have just a little bit more latitude, especially in the shadows if you want to bring out detail. Okay, so we're going to go to the develop tool. And because it's not a raw file, it doesn't say raw here. I'm going to check the optics, okay, down the bottom here. And you'll notice that chromatic aberration isn't there because that's only available on raw files, but I am going to check off defringe. Okay. Then I'm just going to use the blacks and the whites and actually the curves here where you can see the histogram. I do believe that if you were on Windows now, and maybe somebody can confirm, that you should be able to see a histogram here under the curve tool now on Windows also with this latest update. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to tuck in the graph a little bit on the right-hand side, and I'm going to turn on the clipping warnings because I want to just slide this up a little bit until I start to get some clipping in the sky. Can you see that? So then I'm going to bring it back down, and all I'm doing is just punching up the contrast a little bit to bring up the highlights a tiny bit here. Okay. Now, if I want to bring more detail in the sky, in this foreground area, we can use the shadow slider, which does a really nice job. But I'm actually going to sort of leave it there because I want to use the Enhance AI tool. I want to use the Enhance AI tool. Sorry, I got distracted by this chat here for a second, and see what Enhance AI does here. Okay. The other thing I want to check is color while I'm in here, and this is where you'll find the white balance sliders. Okay, so if you want to make this cooler, we can have more sort of pink and blue sunset or sunrise, pardon me, or we can go warmer and go this direction. Okay, I kind of like the idea of having it bluer in the sky like this and a bit more magenta. Okay, so I'm kind of going the opposite end here. And just you can see really quickly with the before and after, I'm using the backslash key. I'm just adjusting the contrast and the color a little bit here. And by pulling exposure, I'm actually adjusting the midtones, checking the histogram and the clippings again. Now that I've done that, I've got a little bit of clipping in the highlights. So I'm just going to readjust using this highlight slider. So that's that dance again. Pull one slider, you may have to adjust another, and then back and forth. I'm going to apply that. And then we're going to look at the Enhance AI. So I'm going to take this one up fairly high just to see what it does. And you can see that it does a really nice job of not only bringing out detail in the foreground, in the land, but also enhancing the contrast and the clarity, or sort of the grunginess, if you will, of the sky. So it does a nice job on both. And if we want to take the sky a little farther, be careful with this one because now we're getting into the territory of going too far. So what does too far look like? That looks like a halo that's happening around here. Can you see how there's a lighter area and then it's sort of fading out to dark? And then the sky up here is super overly saturated. Okay, so that is too far. I am going to darken it a little bit, but I'm going to use a different tool to take it farther. So overall, that one is doing a nice job. And it's picking up a nice detail in the foreground here without going too far. Grab yourself a nice beverage if you don't have one. I'm just having an orange Pellegrino myself. Okay, the next tool I want to look at is the one that I just mentioned a minute ago that's quickly becoming my favorite, and that is the one at the very bottom under the professional tools, color harmony. Okay. When you go to this one in particular, the color contrast sliders, the way that this one works is you bring it up quite high, right? And then adjust the hue slider and see how it affects your image. So I'm looking at, okay, how is it affecting the sky? Is it affecting the oranges and the blues? Because it works on opposite colors, which is what we have in this image here, okay? All right, so let's say I like what it's doing there because it's doing some nice things on the sky, giving a little bit too much saturation again, but I'm just going to dial it down here. Okay, so brilliance in this case on this tool is actually saturation. So I don't know why they've called it brilliance, but we'll just go with that. And I'm going to also try these sliders here. Okay, so I can actually add some more purple to the sky. So this is affecting only the cool colors. In other words, the blue tones. So I can warm up the blues a little bit. Or I can shift the oranges a little bit. So overall here, I like what is happening to the sky, but not so much what is happening in the foreground. It's making it really blue and dark and contrasty, and I'm not really crazy about it. So we're going to try the new masking tools, and let's see how it works on this one. So when you open masking now, it used to be a little paintbrush or looked like sort of a felt marker tip up here on the menu bar of the tool. Now there's a masking tab. Okay, so you just have to go to the masking tab, and you'll notice that now we have not only brush, but we have linear gradient, radial gradient, and AI masking, which is what everybody's been excited about. We also have copy and paste. So now this is the one that I've been waiting for, which is to take the same mask from one image to another. Okay, but in this case, I'm going to try the AI masking. And when you click it, you get this sort of little animation of it working, and it analyzes the items in your image. I believe there are 9 different things that it can look for, and it looks like we found 6 here. So it's got sky, flora, architecture, mountains, natural ground, and man-made ground. So by clicking on any of them, I'm just going to try mountains. Okay, so it thinks most of this image is mountains, right? Let's do man-made ground. Okay, so it's looking at this here as maybe a path or a road. So it's not that far off. That is looking like a road. Okay, natural ground. Okay, so it's trying to analyze what is in the image based on elements of the image itself. Okay, so I find it's a little bit hit and miss. And in terms of this one here with the sky, it gets a little bit of a halo. Okay, so if I want to apply this just to the sky, okay, I'm going to go back here and just hide the mask. So the mask has not disappeared. It's not gone. You just have to open this tab at the bottom and click show. So you can see that it's applying to the sky only. And now when I turn this tool off and on, it's only affecting the sky. Okay, so from there, because this one is not super critical, I could go in and adjust the mask and paint it in a little bit more precisely. Okay. Or I can just dial it back overall a little bit, which is what I think I'm going to do. So I really like this tool here and playing around with these colors. Okay. While I'm down at the bottom, I'm going to go to the other one, which is super contrast. And I want to see if I can pick up any more color in here. And let's see, right? So these are shadows for sure. So you see how I can even lighten the highlight or lighten the foreground even more this way. Let's see what it's considering midtones. Okay, so this is adding contrast into highlights, shadows, or midtones separately. So let's see what that's doing. See how that's doing a nice job here? And I can make sure that if I'm lightening the shadows, as is the case going to the left, so it's opposite of what you'd expect. It's opposite of the histogram and the other sliders, right? To the left here with balance is lighten. Okay? So if I want to just lighten these a little bit, I can actually add some brightness to the foreground, but also contrast. Okay? Now I noticed that Marnie had cropped this image, so I am going to crop it as well, but I want to see what Luminar thinks in terms of automated. So the AI crop. So I'm going to just click it and see what Luminar Neo suggests. As I mentioned before, I find that it often does a good amount of cropping, but doesn't necessarily put it in the right place or where I would agree with. Right? So I'm actually going to remove some of the foreground, and I'm going to get rid of this hill over on the right. And I think that the horizon is slightly crooked, so I'm going to see what it does here. So it's corrected it a little bit that way. And if you want to see the grid lines, just click outside your image here. I should be able to, there we go. When you click outside the image and drag it, and I'm looking at, it's a tricky one because the horizon isn't straight across. So I'm looking at here compared to sort of the background here. And I'm just going to come in a little bit more panoramic, but not too much. So I like this road in the foreground here. And just something like that. Okay, let's see how that compares to Marty's. I still feel like the horizon is crooked, so I might want to go on this full line in the background here. So let's try that again. So when I click it, I am looking for trying to line up the whole thing, something like that. Okay, how about that? So let's see now how we compare to Marty's. Okay, so far, this is where I'm at. Okay, Marty's added a lot more color. And I do feel like yours is tilted, Marty, like it's leaning this way, right? And I'm looking at the layers here, right? And the line that goes from there to there as the horizon. And I'm still not sure that mine is correct either, right? So I went a little bit more blue with the color, but similar kind of idea. Something else that I might do with this one is to see if there's a mood that I'd like to add or a LUT that would enhance this one. And remember, if you don't have the LUTs, you can just get my what am I trying to say? The LUT contact sheets. Let me open the default ones. Okay, so the default LUTs that come with Luminar, you can't preview them yet. Oops. So if you would like to have something like this, once I get it on the screen, you'll be able to see it. Okay, and it's a contact sheet that I made of the default ones. Okay, so you can kind of see a preview of what they look like. Right, so when I'm scrolling through these, I'm just going to say, okay, what do I think might look good on this image? Or I could just go ahead and try one. I usually turn my amount up a little bit higher before I go and apply any, and just to see it is a stronger effect. Right? And then I can always dial it back down. Okay, so Long Beach was kind of cool. I was looking at this Santa Barbara one as well, or maybe even Cold Color Punch. You see that brightened it a little bit. I kind of like the Santa Barbara one. Oh, what's the other one I had here? That's the one I had a moment ago. I had it. There we go. So I kind of like this look for something different. Okay, so it's very pink as opposed to Marty's. And it's maybe gone a little bit too blue and pink. So I can always go back and shift that. Right? There's a couple ways I can go back to the original develop, or I can just go open it again. The disadvantage if you go back in your edits to the bottom one is that it turns off everything else. Okay, so it's hard to replicate or estimate what the color is going to look like here because everything else is turned off. Okay, so if I want to adjust the color, I can just add develop again, and I can increase the warmth here take out some of the yellow. Okay. And if it's not giving me exactly what I want, which is still kind of blue, I can come back to the original and correct it a bit here as well. Okay, so let's see how we're doing. Still very pink in the foreground. Okay, now there's a quick way to fix that because the land I know here should be a bit more orangey, right? And that is toning. So toning allows you to adjust the color and the highlights and the shadows differently. So I'm going to increase the amount, get a yellow tone. See how that's working really nicely here, okay? And I'm going to go quite high with it so I can see what it's doing on the land. Okay, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to mask it again. Okay, so this is exactly where I could go back to that other one and have copied that mask and paste it. Okay, or I can just go in here, do the mask AI again, select the sky because it did a pretty good job the first time. Or I could go back and actually select mountains because it did a good job there. See, it's missing some bits, but it's not bad. Okay, so I could just select mountains, or I could select sky. And I'm doing that just to show you that you can invert it and get a pretty good method this way. Okay, so I selected the sky and then just inverted it. Okay. So now you can see that that is affecting the foreground color nicely. So it's not that much different in terms of what you did, Marty. I might add a little bit more black here, right? And I would do that using the develop tool and the curve or the blacks and the whites. So I'll just add a little bit. The other thing that I noticed in here is that when you go back into the edit panel, your histogram is not showing. It only shows over in the tools panel. So that's something that I may suggest to Skylum to amend, because you kind of need to see the histogram no matter what kind of edits you're doing, right? So I'm just going to add a bit more blacks. And voila. And I may add my favorite mystical at the end. And if I find that the colors are literally coming out too strong, I will just go into the color tool and dial them down a little bit. I can take the overall saturation down, okay? Or I can just work with the individual colors. So saturation, blues definitely need to come down, and I feel like the magenta is a little bit over the top, as well as the red. Okay. We can also shift the colors in here. Remember, we can shift to more orange. Okay. So now we've got a bit more orange and yellow, and so on. So there is no right or wrong when you have an image like this. You've got some great clouds and some great sunset happening here because of the clouds, and you'll often get this kind of thing when you're in a scene like this where it's dusty, like deserty, or if you live in Alberta like we do in the fall when they're harvesting the fields and you get that dust in the sky, you'll get these fantastic sunsets and sunrises, right? All right, let's see what everybody is saying. Welcome, Nigel. Evening in the Caribbean. Okay, Ron, what time is it for you in Adelaide? It must be more, is it early morning? Must be later for you than usual, because I know some people are attending the Saturday one, and this is our first Wednesday. So maybe we've missed a few people because of the time and change and date. Awesome. We do have a discount code. It's $10 off. And it's Digital Photo Mentor, but I believe that the discount codes do not work on Luminar Neo. If you're purchasing anything else, I think that it does. Okay, so I will just type that into the chat for you. So use that discount code if you are buying anything on Skylum. So I appreciate that because it does give us a small commission and you get a discount. So everybody wins, right? 10 a.m. Thursday. Well, that's not too bad. Marty, the last change did a great job on the color in the foreground. It's closer to how you remember it. Yeah, so remember that toning tool is really great. And also you can do any of the tools now with the masking AI to really hone in on where you apply that tool. I like how you've handled the color contrast and crop. I struggled with straightening it. Nothing in the environment was flat. Yeah, I was struggling with it as well, Marty, but I think the key there is to look at the bits of the land on either side. And that's what I use to straighten. And I think right now it looks fairly straight, right? Like if we go back here and we look at this one compared to yours seems a little bit tilted. So fairly similar. You just took more off the bottom and more off the top. So I like the panoramic crop as well, just different. Okay. All right. Any questions about that? Let's take a look at another one. This is an image of Vivian's. And this one is, I believe this is an Olympus file, ORF. Okay, so this is a raw file. Okay, so let's take a look, starting with Luminar Develop Raw. Okay, and the camera profiles. Okay, so look at this. Okay, so it definitely has recognized, and this is the only time and place that you will find this is in the Develop Raw tool. Okay, so it must be a raw file. So if we switch to any of these, we can see what it does in terms of choosing a camera profile. Okay, so Vivid definitely adds more color. I generally don't choose Vivid because I like to add the contrast and the color myself and have a little bit more control. Okay. Now, when we look at this histogram, we can see that there are some things clipping on the right. So the sky is a little bright. We can fix that. And ideally, you do want to have a little bit of black clipping, but not highlights if possible. Right? So the black clipping is fine. I'm going to come back to that. Color, we can warm it up a little bit, but generally I want to increase the exposure here overall on the land. Okay, then we're going to bring the highlights down, and I'm pressing that J key again. Okay, so see what happens when I do that. I'm not going to go too far here because if I take the highlights all the way down, it's applying to the entire image. So this is what's called global edit. Okay. So with a global edit, it applies everywhere. And I really want to just affect the sky here. So I'm just going to go part way, and then I'll come back and correct the sky with a different tool. Right? I am going to check the optics. And now you can see that I've got distortion, chromatic aberration, and fringe. Okay. So when I click this distortion one, it corrects for barrel distortion of a lens, especially a wide angle lens. Okay. So see what just happens. And I click that, it takes a second to apply, I think. Okay, so you could choose to use that one or not. But the main reason that I wanted to look at the optics is because of these two here, the fringe and the chromatic aberration. I'm actually going to leave the distortion off. Okay, can you see that there's a bit of a red outline here? Let me just zoom in even closer. So what I'm looking for is, see how there's a red or purple fringe outside the leaves? Okay, it's either chromatic aberration, so I can try that one first. See how that got rid of that? Okay, watch that again. Watch the leaves. Do you see the redness? Now it's gone, okay, with just a click. And it can also be a fringe color. A fringe will appear when you have something light against something dark like this, and especially when we're adjusting the brightness of the sky. So that's pretty much all I want to do in here. I might give it a little bit more contrast. And we could also play with the curves. Okay, so I could adjust the highlights this way and then bring the tones back using the curve. You could share my video, please, Rob, on using curves, as I did a full video on this one. And so see how I'm just adjusting the curves a little bit. And I actually want to keep the contrast down here. So it's a bit of a weird looking line, right? And maybe I'm going too far here because I still got some clipping here. So I'm just going to bring the highlights down a little bit. and we'll adjust the rest using something else. So now I'm going to try the Enhance AI and see what that does. Whew, look at that. So for me, this Enhance AI slider does a really great job on stuff like this, because the landscape here, it was a little flat, right? So look at just the landscape and what it does. So I almost want to take this one all the way up. Okay? Sky Enhancer is definitely trying to bring the sky in line, but it's not addressing the contrast or the brightness that needs to be addressed first. Okay, so I'm going to apply this with a mask, and I'm going to try the AI and see how well it selects the sky, and then I'm going to try to invert it. Okay, because I really want to get the land and the tree and not the sky. Okay, so we've got not bad. Okay, I do notice that, can you see what I mean by there's this halo here, right? So if you want a perfect mask, you'll need to come in and do some adjustments. I'm hoping that they add some sliders that will allow us to refine the mask a little bit before. And I think they probably will improve. Well, I know they will improve this tool as we go, because the sliders and the masking in the sky replacement AI is actually really good. So I anticipate that this tool will be just as good eventually. Okay, so now I've masked it to just the tree and this part down here. Okay, so now this tool, the Enhance AI, is doing a great job. I'm just going to leave it all the way up because it's working fantastic. Okay. Now we have a couple of options with the sky. We could leave it and try and work with what's there, right? So I could come back here into develop and bring the highlights down, and it starts to get muddy, right? Because it's really fairly bright and overblown. Or I'm just going to delete that one. Or we can replace the sky. So let's see what happens if we do a sky replacement on this one. If you are a member of any of the Luminar groups on Facebook, I find that the skies that are included with Luminar are overused to a great degree, and your images start to look like everybody else's. So definitely either make your own skies or purchase a pack. Okay? We do have a sky pack available, and I have some new ones coming soon with Aurora. So that's kind of exciting. If you could share a link to our sky pack, please, Rob. And also, I do have a cheat sheet for Luminar Neo keyboard shortcuts. So we have the Luts preview sheet, the Luminar Neo keyboard shortcuts, and whatever else I just mentioned. Oh, our sky pack. All right, so sky selection. They did make this available for previews. So I'm just going to go in and take a look at my sky pack. So with this one here, you have to be careful when you're selecting a sky that the lighting matches. Okay, so before I even do this, I want to analyze this image. Okay, so the light here is very soft, meaning there's no direct sun and harsh shadows. How can I tell? Because it's very diffused over here. Okay, so the shadow is sort of gradates slowly away from the curb here. So the shadows are soft, meaning the sun would not be in the sky visibly. Okay, I can see that the sky is brighter over here on the left than it is on the right, and the shadows are on this side. So the light should be coming from the left-hand side of the sky as well. So when I pick a sky, okay, I'm going to pick a sunset. This is kind of my favorite one. And when I add it, okay, I want to check for two things. I want to check that the color looks good and that the light is coming from the right direction, which it is, right? This one may be a little bit too, well, let's play with this one. Okay. So the first thing I want to do is refine the masks. And this is what I was talking about, the other masking tool. See, it did a much better job here going around the trees than the AI mask tool did. And you'll notice here that we still have those same tools, right? So I want to get the horizon placed right. Okay, so I want to make sure that I've got the horizon where it belongs. And then with the vertical, that's just a refinement. Okay, I can move it up a little. And this one allows me to move the image sort of back and forth. So I like the idea of this cloud sort of mimicking the line of the trees here, almost like they're a mirror image, but I don't want it touching these trees. So I like this idea. Oops, wrong one. I like this idea of having this just slightly off center like that. Okay. Now using the mask refinement tools, okay, what I'm going to do is look at, is it doing a good replacement? Because when you have clouds in the original sky, you want to make sure that it's covering them. Okay, that's the global adjustment. So if you drag global up higher, it will fill over top of things that are there. Okay, so if you see any of the stuff underneath, and you can see that if I lower global, it goes around the tree here and gives me a halo. Right? So if I increase it, it goes over the stuff that's there. Okay? Fix details and close gaps does a good job if you have any little spaces in here. So I'm just going to take fix details up to the top, and it looks pretty good because I'm not seeing any sort of halos or anything around the tree, and it looks like it blends really nicely. Okay. I mentioned the lighting direction. You can see that the sun is over here. If it was the wrong way, you can flip it. Okay. Now I can choose to add some relighting to the scene, meaning that whatever colors in the sky will reflect into the foreground as well. In this case, I don't want to go too high with it. Okay. There's no reflection, no water, so we don't have to worry about that. Okay. Defocus. When you have a sky in going into see the horizon like this, what I'm checking is the stuff in my horizon or at infinity sharp? Okay, if it's not, I'm probably going to want to defocus my sky a little bit as well, because the sky is further away than that hill, right? So it would be ever so slightly out of focus. I also like to use this atmospheric haze one because it sort of softens the sky a bit. Can you see that? I'm going to warm it up so it's a bit more yellow as opposed to blue. And I might even brighten it so that it's not so dark, right? Or we could go the other way and make it dark. No, I like the brightness. Let's go this way. So the sky is a little bit softer, right? So that's this particular sky. Let's see what happens if we pick a different one. Maybe even just something with some blue wispy clouds. Okay, so that's not bad either. So the replacement went exactly where the other one was, so I can adjust the positioning if I need to. Okay, let's put that one down a little bit. Now this one, I could flip either way. So kind of like that one here with the little wispy clouds over there. And in this case, let's just make it the original sky. I do like the brightness, a little softer, like so, and like that. So see how just by doing a few little edits, even though the sky was good, right, I replaced it and it's still believable because of the one I've chosen and how I'm placing it and using these tools, right? Like that. But we're not done yet. Let's go to color harmony, because now we've got some nice opposite colors with the yellow and the blue. So whenever you have an image like this, I want to bring the contrast out in these yellows and greens. So look at that. Look at how great that is, right? In this range, let's say somewhere about here. So look at what that's doing overall. I think that's doing a really great job on these leaves here. Love it. Love it. And the last thing I will do probably is just a quick little vignette, but we can also play with the landscape tools. I'm just going to drag that right from there. Landscape is where you find that golden hour, right? And even more golden for this fall, which is nice. And of course, the foliage enhancer, which is the greens, but we always have to shift this guy to the left. Always, always. Okay, so I'm just going to dial that back a tiny bit. So let's take a look at the before and after, because I think this one has gotten a nice transformation here. Okay, so the original was very high contrast. The sky was blown out. The land itself was very flat. Okay, now we have this really beautiful scene of this fall hillside with these, I'm guessing it's grapes. It looks like vineyard, okay? And the yellow leaves in the foreground, okay? Rob said, but wait, there's more. There was more. Right. So what do you guys think about that one? Sky replacement? Yes? No? Yay? Nay? What was the vote on that one? Australians live in the future. True, compared to us anyway. So who lives in your future, Ron? If you are the future for us, who lives in your future? I guess if you're in Central Australia, then Melbourne and Sydney would be in your future. That's about as far east as you can go. You like that one, Danelle? Thank you. Yeah, I like this one too. It doesn't really look like a sunset-y picture. It didn't feel like it was matching. And that seems to be the consensus. Second sky. Oh yes, the Kiwis are to your east as well. That's correct. Sky works well here. Right. So I hope Vivian is watching. Maybe I'll drop her a note and let her know that I've edited her image because I think this looks fantastic. Right. So those of you down under are heading into fall. Do you get any color changes down there, Ron? Or not so much? Depends on the kind of trees, I would imagine. Right. All right, let's see if I can do another landscape. This one is Rob's image, not Rob that you know. So Rob Kershaw, right? Now this one is a raw file. So once again, we have the camera profiles. Okay, so the only one here that's recognized is Adobe. Let me just go back and see what kind of file it is. Aha. Okay, so it's a DNG. So I'm not sure what he photographed it with, but sometimes the DNG conversion, if it's been converted from the raw file to DNG, it doesn't recognize the camera profiles. Right? Thumbs up from Brandon. Rob enjoys it. Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to not worry about the camera profile here because the Luminar one and the Adobe one look pretty similar. Right? What I am going to look at is trying to pick out some detail in here. And I'm just going to take this slider up to see what I'm looking at. So it looks like Grand Canyon, right? And some great lighting coming in there, right? So you can see the sky is quite dynamic and dramatic, okay? So there's lots of information here. We just need to massage it out a little bit, right? Maybe there's a new saying for you, Rob. Massage it. So I'm going to bring the highlights down on this one. Actually, you know what? I'm going to use curves for this one. Okay, so I want to bring the highlights down. So I'm actually doing an inverse curve, okay, because I'm reducing the contrast. Okay, so see how that's immediately pulling out some detail in both. And what I'm trying to do is to get it so that I can capture some detail and then bring it over to that AI tool. I'm going to give it a bit more yellow. We're going to go really yellow on this one. See if I go blue, we get a little bit of blue in the sky. But I'm going to go a bit more yellow. And let's see what that takes us. Okay. I'm going to use the Enhance AI tool after this. Okay. Make sure I'm using these two. I almost always use the chromatic aberration and the defringe because they're a simple checkoff box. Why wouldn't you use them? Speaking of Kiwis, there's Trish. We were talking about you, Trish. Talking about time zones, and it was tomorrow in Australia compared to us, which is Wednesday. All right, so I think that's about all I want to do with develop. I might bring the exposure up a little bit, but I'm still trying to keep these highlights in control here. Okay, so see how as I do that, look what a great job that is doing of maintaining this sky detail here. Okay, so I'm excited to see what Enhance AI is going to do here. So I'm going to take this up to the top. Look what a great job it does on the foreground. And then the sky enhancer, I'm going to bring it up a little bit, but not go too crazy with it, because the light that's there is actually really great. I don't want to get too carried away. Look at that. Okay. Now I want to head down to color harmony. So I wasn't actually as excited about this image until I pulled out some of this detail, because look at what is happening here. So I'm kind of want the, and that's actually what I'm looking for, is up here. There was a funny color in the sky. Can you see how there's sort of this red tint on the horizon here? And I want to get rid of it. So I'm looking for a way to adjust these. That's actually not too bad. I can just dial that back. Okay, if I go the opposite way over here, now I'm getting rid of it completely. Okay. So it's just making it a bit more yellow. Okay. And we can also affect the colors of the highlights, shadows, and midtones separately. Okay, so the tool just above here, which is the smart contrast, super contrast, does the contrast of highlight, shadows, and midtones. This one does the color. Okay, so if I want to affect, let's say I want more yellow in the sky, okay, I can do more yellow. Or maybe I want a little bit of red. Okay, so I get to decide. Let's see about midtones here. Ooh, I kind of like that. Look what that did to the land. Bringing out the earthy colors in the land. Look at the rocks here as I bring this up. I really like what that's doing on the rocks. Okay. Nice. Let's do that. Okay, so let's see what this tool is doing. Overall, I'm going to dial this one down a little bit so it's not so much. That's looking pretty spectacular. Okay. I'm going to do some structure here. So structure is great because I know that if I add this to this part here with the rays, it's going to bring the rays out a bit more. Okay, but if you go too far with structure, you end up with something that looks like this. So once again, to me, this is too far. This is over edited. You're starting to get halos around everything, and it's just too much. Okay, so I'm going to bring this up a little bit to enhance the land here and these rays, but not go too far. And as a matter of fact, I may actually use a linear mask on this one. Let's take it a little farther. So now I'm going to use the new linear gradient, and I'm going to apply this just to the bottom part of the image up to this cloud. Okay. So if you do it wrong, not to worry, you can just invert. So once I go back here, again, it's not gone. It's just hiding. Okay. So it's only applying to the bottom. Can you see that? So I'm happy with that. Let's do a little bit of detail as well. So again, I want to bring some detail into these rocks. I'm just zooming in a little bit. Let's go 50%. So I want to bring some detail in here. And I'm seeing some noise there as well. So I'm not sure what aperture or what ISO this was shot at. Plus, we're bringing out a lot of detail through exposure. So when we push it, it could be adding some noise. So see the contrast that's happening here with the details. A little bit of sharpen. Okay. And I always want to bring this masking one up. So I don't want this to apply to the sky again. Okay. So I'm going to mask it one more time. And linear gradient, again, just on this bottom bit. So about like that. Okay. Let's take a before and after. Okay. Can't even see anything, can you? Look at that. Now that I've done this overall, I'm just going to add a vignette, but I think I even want to darken the whole thing a little bit more. Okay, so I lightened it originally. Let's just see what happens if I bring back some darkness. No. Okay, so here's an example of try something, don't like it, don't have to do it. Simple as that. Okay. Going back here, I'm going to double check this Enhance AI because I want to make sure I'm not going too far with the sky. And I'm going to mask it actually off the sky. So again, I'm just going to apply it onto this bottom part of the image. So it's only applying down here. It's going to take a minute to catch up. And I did that because I found the clouds were getting a little bit too crunchy looking. So Bob, or Rob, I think this was Rob's image, Rob Kershaw. Shot with a Pentax. Okay, so that's maybe why the camera profiles are not in there. That is a spectacular image. So the masking tools, if you haven't started playing with them yet, I do find, like I said, they're take a little bit to get used to in terms of how they work together. I will be doing a video on the masking tools very soon, especially for those of you that are in the Luminar Neo class. So there will be a new video on the masking tools, not to worry about that. Okay. You know what? Now that I'm looking at this, I want to try one more tool here. I want to try Dramatic. And I just want to take this up a little bit. See how that's increasing the contrast? And this one, I'm just going to apply again to the foreground mostly. Okay, so I'm going to do a big fade. So it's only affecting these foreground items here. Okay, so that linear gradient is a really quick way of doing things on the edge. I love it. We could continue on with this one forever because this is a really cool image. We could just start trying some different Luts. Okay, that one was kind of nice. Add some yellow, a little bit more orange, yellow, pink. Okay. Ooh, that one's dramatic. That's kind of nice, actually. What do you guys think? Bright and airy? Moody. I almost like that better. Yeah? I kind of like it. Too much contrast, maybe. Let's do, how about that? I do like it. I do like it, I have to say. Now, the other thing we can do is add the sun rays tool. And it might seem counterintuitive because there already is sun rays here. I just have to make sure I put it in the same place, right, behind the cloud. And you'll notice that it does come out from behind the clouds. I want to make them warmer, like the image. Right? And the reason that I'm doing this is because I want to just sort of add to it a little bit. I don't even have to make them really strong, right? But I can use this overall look slider then. Okay, so I can make the rays really subtle, but now I can use this overall look slider to go darker versus lighter. See how that's enhancing the rays that are already there? Maybe let's go with a little bit less rays. And then just randomize them a little bit. I like that. And now it looks like it's pointing out here. So see how we've just enhanced what's already there? And by using this overall look slider, I can completely change the look of this image with this tool. So that's the one thing I do like about the sun rays tool is it's not just the sun rays, it adds a vignette and contrast and everything. So one more before and after. There we go. Smash the like button. Moody, you like the moody one? Okay, cool. Seems to be the consensus. Moody. Reduce the crepuscular. I'm not sure. I have to Google that word, I admit. Is that a correct word? Sun rays, thank you. Awesome. Right? You wouldn't think of adding the sun rays here, but because of they're already there, I'm not really adding much to them. Sorry, I'm obsessed with that word you said, Dano. I'm not really adding much, but it's enhancing that what's already there, right? Huh, sure enough, look at that. Look at that. Look at you using the word. I've learned a word today. Thank you for that, Danelle. Okay. Let's see how we're making out. I've got one more, and this one is Sue's image. Again, this is Australia, I believe. I think she told me that this was Australia. I don't know. I did do some edits. I'm just going to... actually, there's an easier way to discard the edits. And that is... There's a keyboard shortcut for that, which I haven't memorized, so shame on me. And that is revert to original. Okay? So here's her original image. It is raw. You can see the raw. So I'm going to choose landscape, and let's see how that one goes. Maybe portrait. Portrait's actually not bad because it gives a nice red to the sand. Or neutral. So I'm actually going to go with, what do we think? I'm going to go with the portrait one with a little bit of red in these hills here. There's red in them there hills. So our histogram, what does this tell us? That there's a lot of bright areas. I see a tiny bit of clipping in the water, but the whole thing is pushed slightly off to the right. So I'm going to use the exposure slider, which is adjusting the middle of the graph. Okay, so always remember that exposure affects the midtones more. Okay, so I'm pulling this one down and it's affecting everything. Okay, but now the clipping's gone. Okay, we still don't have the shift double click thing that like with my little trick in Lightroom to allow us to know when we've got clippings and things on the whites and the blacks. So I'm just going to do it manually. So I do have the clipping warnings on. That was that J key. And I'm taking the white slider up and the black slider down. Okay. I'm still not getting any clipping, but I'm adding some contrast. Okay. Can you see that? So it's hazy. It's really hazy. I'm going to bring them back just a tiny bit. Because I know there's a dehaze slider as well. So hang on to your hats for that one. I'm going to warm it up a little bit because I find there's lots of sort of weird, overly blue over there. And maybe it's a little bit too much magenta. On second thought, I'm not crazy about the portrait profile now. That looks better, right? There we go. So that's a good start. Of course, I'm going to check off these two options here. And then we're going to go, I want to check to make sure it's straight. So this is another one where the horizon is tricky because we don't see it and it's a hill, right? We don't see the whole thing all the way. So let's just see. Oops. I'm going to click this one. So see, it did correct it slightly. But let's see if it's actually, it's really hard to tell. I'm going to go with something like that. Okay. Other than the slight tilt, I wouldn't do a lot. Maybe crop off this part on the side here because there's that little thing on the edge. I'm just going to come in a little bit overall here. See what I'm cropping out is this little outcropping or a highlight. Okay. Like that. So I'm just getting rid of that highlight that was on the edge. Yes, my eagle eyes. Right? For those of you that were on Facebook, I was playing around with the Top Gun call sign. Make a call sign for yourself. And mine came up as snake eyes, which Anne thought was funny. So I should be eagle eyes. All right, so I'm using the Enhance AI again. So just because there's a lot of new tools coming in Luminar Neo, don't forget about the old ones. Don't forget about the ones that are already there, that have been there for several iterations, including Luminar 4, like way back to Luminar 4, right? Because this one does a good job. I'm not going to take this one as high, but I know that there is that haze slider under the landscape tool. Okay. And the more that you use the program, the more that you'll start to remember where these things are located. So dehaze, look what it does, right? It gets rid of all that fog. Now, the question is, do I want to do that, right? Do I want to get rid of all the fog, or do I actually want to just give it a bit more contrast and then play up the fog, right? If I want to play up the fog, we have Atmosphere AI. Okay, so I'm going to just play with the different options here. So fog, looks like it comes from the top. Layered fog, okay, and we can play with the distance and so on. That one's more sort of foreground to middle ground, right? This one's at the top. Mist, yeah, more from the top again. And haze sort of in the middle. So this one actually, if I want it to feel like there's fog in and around that middle section here, see what that one's doing? Because it is already there. We're just adding to it. Okay, so we can either get rid of the fog or run with it. Okay, so I kind of like this hazy look, right? It feels like early morning mist off the water. Could also do a sky replacement here. There's not much sky showing, but it's kind of boring. So we could do a sky replacement here. Let's try that same blue one that I did before. Okay, so this one's going to need a blend. We can fix that with the masks. So the first thing I want to check is the horizon position to make sure that it's going down far enough, which it is. Right? And I want to close the gaps a little bit. Let's just take this one. It's not closing in this gap here, so I want to get rid of this halo. So I'm playing with these sliders to get rid of this halo. Let's see. Usually one or the other does a trick. Still got a bit of a haze there. I want to make sure this is down far enough. Aha, there we go. The sky was up too high. Here we go. That's a better blend. A little bit of clouds. And then my atmospheric haze. Seems to be brightening the overall image, so I don't want to brighten this. Definitely want this haze down. So let's see how our sky is doing. Yeah, it seems to be affecting this part of the water as well, which I'm not crazy about. So I'm just going to mask the sky. Why not? Just like that. So there's nothing really to reflect. It's not going to reflect in the ocean waves, right? Okay. So just very subtle, but slight sky replacement. It was less boring than the original one. I need to have a vignette on here. I want to make sure that this part of the beach is darkened. So we're going to just do, we're going to do a darken. I'm going to use my technique of feather to 0, darken, choose the subject, and I'm going to go a little bit rounder. So I'm darkening a bit more of the beach, like that. Then put the feather back and adjust the amount. See what it's doing. Always check the before and after of the tool that you're using, as well as the full image before and after. Okay, so the full image is the / key, And the tool is the eyeball on each of the tools. Take a moment for it to catch up. Okay, there we go. All right, let's see. Yeah, that's a good question, Sheila. I think this is not the 12 Apostles. I asked her about this one. I've been to the 12 Apostles, but there's only actually 11 left because one fell into the ocean. But yeah, no, the 12 Apostles is near Melbourne, I believe. Rob, is that correct? This is on the west coast, I believe, of Australia. Okay. Why I think it was affecting it was because I was brightening the sky, and I had the relight slider up, but it shouldn't affect the whole image, but clearly it was. So it's possible. Yeah. Ron says it is by Melbourne. It is by Melbourne. All right. Well, yeah, Great Ocean Road, Victoria. Yeah, of course. Yes, I went to Great Ocean Road. Just outside of Melbourne, but I don't think this is where this is. I think she said it was nearby because I remember asking her about that. What else can we do with this image? So we've added some fog. Let's add some mystical because I think that will go with it. And I said glow, but I'm thinking that maybe I need to add some glow as well. Okay, so mystical definitely adds to that feeling of mistiness. But let me see if mystical is what we want or is glow what we want. Let's just see. I'm going to go with Orton Effects Soft. Not bad. Right. The glow is a cool one because it really only affects the white parts. Okay, so see where there's already some highlights? That's where it glows. So it doesn't affect the these things here, the rock formations. Okay. Let's just do that. So let's go with that. And it made the clouds kind of softer as well. So I like that. Now I still find this sand is too bright and I don't want to mask it. So I'm going to go use the color tool and go to luminance. And I'm guessing here it's going to be either orange or yellow, or maybe a combination of both. Okay, so see if I darken orange. Right? So there's definitely some orange in there. Definitely some yellow in there. And a little bit of red looks like on the side over here. Okay, so I can bring these tones down a little bit while simultaneously brightening some of the blues, right? Look at, I can bring the blues out of the water. And remember, of course, I can always mask this, right? So if I just want it to apply to the sand, I can just mask it. As a matter of fact, let's just test the masking. Let's test the AI masking on this one. Okay, so we got our little animation going. Okay, so now it's found sky, floor, architecture, water, mountains, and man-made ground. Okay, so let's see what it thinks is man-made ground. Most of that. Okay, so not quite right. Water. Again, it's getting a bit of the sand. So this is still something that I think needs a bit of work. The Mask AI is learning tools. Okay, it did the sky fairly well. Let's see what it thinks is mountains. It's got to be these columns here. Yeah. Okay, so if I wanted this in here, I would probably just paint it in or use a radial mask on this one so that it only is applying to the beach. Okay. Less of a fade here. All right, there we go. So we're just getting this beach like so. The other one I was going to try real quickly at the end here, again, is color harmony because we've got opposing colors. So sort of an orangey sand against the blue. And if I want to darken the blues or darken the sand, go to the opposite color. Now you notice that increasing that has given me some clipping again. So see how having that clipping warning on is really handy, right? By adding this tool and going up into the blue hues, it's darkening the opposite color, which is the oranges, and it's giving me these cool tones in the water. Okay, so let me just turn this one on and off. Look what that's doing. I think that's doing a really nice job. Right? Maybe too much in the sky because it is actually over brightening the sky, but it makes it blend a little bit nicer too, don't you think? Once again, if I don't want it on the sky, I can just simply mask it off. I'm just going to do a radial gradient, or linear gradient, pardon me. Go back over here. Okay, so now it's not affecting the sky, but it sure is doing a nice job on the sand and the water. Okay. Warm it up or cool it down, make the beach more red. And the blue's more blue. So this tool, can you see why I like this tool so much? Let's do a full before and after. Okay. Definitely hazy, slightly overexposed. But look at how much color and detail we could pull out. Now, did you see me touch a saturation slider anywhere in here? Okay. Could I use the dodge and burn in the develop mode? Yes, and I'm actually doing a video on that as well. I know you got you got my little trick from the Luminar Neo course, but everybody else doesn't have that one. Okay. So yes, I could go in and use the dodge and burn in the develop mode and paint it in as well. So I want to do as little amount of painting and masking with the brush as possible, which is why I'm really happy to have, at the very least, the linear gradient and the radial gradient. I find that the AI masking is still a little bit hit and miss, but it works as a good starting point, let's say that, right? And the program, the whole thing with artificial intelligence is it's constantly learning, right? So the more people that are using it, the more effective it's going to become, because it's going to be sending data back to Skylum on what is a sky, what is a water, what is a mountain, what is a tree, what is, a human. So human is another thing it can select. Transportation is something else it can select. And I'm not sure about animals. I think I did see birds or animals. I can find those as well. So the more that we use the program and the more that we try these tools, the more feedback will go back to Skylum, and they will just make the tools that much better. That is a great point, Danelle. And I do have a color wheel here somewhere. Let me call it up, because I usually show that. And you're right, you do need to have a good understanding of the color wheel. I can't find it on my computer. Give me a second here. And how the color wheel works, right? So in order to, let's use this one, understand this color harmony tool, so exactly what Danelle was talking about here, right? This is a color wheel. And this is just one that I got off of Wiki Commons images, where you can download this for your own purposes, right? So when you look at colors that are opposite on the scale, those are called complementary. So on this here, we have yellow and purple. So look at the colors of the sand, right, versus the water, right? What have we got? Orange, blue, orangey, bluish purpley, right? What was one of the other ones we were looking at? We had some yellow and green tones in the landscape, okay, versus the opposite red tones that were in the sky, right? So when you have opposing colors like this in your image, or they're called complementary colors, they actually are really strong. It's a really strong compositional element as well. So if we look at some of these images that we've been working on, right? Marty has it in his image, complementary colors or opposites, right? We have it here, right? The yellows and the blues. Here, this one is a little bit more what I would call analogous. And this one is where the images or the colors are side by side. So this image is basically all in this range, right? On this side of the color scale. So those are what's called analogous colors. And again, opposite, right? So look at some of your images and see if you're drawn to those opposing colors, right? Because our eyes love to have these contrasts. Just to see if there was another one here. I want to do one more image. This one was sent in quite a while ago by Hal, who is doing the Luminar Neo course as well. And I want to punch up some of the contrast here using the same techniques, right? So I'm going to use develop. This is not a raw image again. So I'm going to use develop. And I'm going to check the curve because it's a little bit flat. So this one tells us there's nothing black and there's nothing white, right? A little bit of clipping in the highlights there. But I'm going to actually bring this in on the black end. So tucking in the left side of the graph here on the curves adds more black, okay? See that under the curve, under the bridge here. And I'm just going to bring the highlights down so we have the sky in control and a little bit of contrast. So I can do smart contrast or I can do an S curve. Okay. I want to keep the highlights down in the sky and just give it a little bit more contrast down in this bottom area. Okay, so see how I have more control in the curve area, right? If I did smart contrast, it does overall, okay? But if I do this, I've kept the highlights in line, and then I've added some contrast down here. See the difference? And I've got the clippings on, so we're good to go with the clippings. And just for fun, we'll make sure that defringe is checked off. I feel like it's crooked. I'm looking at the side of the building and it feels like the castle is tilting a little bit. So I'm going to try correction. And I think it needs to go a little bit more this way. Right. Now the thing with this one here, I'm going to correct or I'm going to crop freeform because this foreground here, does this add anything to the image? When you have a lot of information in the foreground, it feels like the subject is far away. So unless there's something that's adding to the picture, we don't need it, right? Because it's just this mud bog that's really not interesting at all, right? So for me, this is far more interesting with the sky. Maybe just a tiny bit more on the bottom. Oops. Where is it going? Let's start over again. My crop went crazy here. Okay, so I'm going to go free form here and then just come up a little bit and maybe go even a little panoramic because we don't need as much sort of sky. Let's try that. See how that feels a lot more pleasing to me, right? Yes, Bob, the replay is available immediately following this on the YouTube channel. So as soon as the live stream is done, the video will be on the YouTube channel. So just make sure that you subscribe and check out the live tab there. The videos will be all there for you under the video tab. Maybe the castle is sinking in the mud. It's possible. Yes. A class on color theory. Well, interesting idea, Dino. See, I'm not even an expert in that. Like, I'm not a painter. I know what I use in my own skill set, but I'm not even call myself an expert on color theory. So once again, Accent AI. And this one, I am going to use that sky enhancer. But I want to show you what happens, okay, again, if you go to extreme. Because this is a JPEG, can you see what's happening to the sky? Right? And because I'm taking it to a serious nth degree by pulling the sliders all the way, right? So this is over edited, okay? So you have to really be careful of doing stuff like this, especially when you have a JPEG. If I was working on the raw file, I'd probably be able to take this a lot farther. Right? So this AI, Accent AI, does a great job overall. Okay, see that? Like literally, look what it's doing. It's like magic. Okay, so if all you do is develop an Accent AI, you've already come a long way. Okay? Now we are picking up a lot of noise in the sky, and I'm also seeing some dust spots. Okay, so this is either a water droplet on the lens or something on the sensor. Okay, could be one of the two. But let's try the erase tool and see if it picks those up as dust spots and removes them using the AI technology. Okay, so it's thinking. I wish we had the little animation for this one too, right? All we have is this little circle. Okay, so see, it did pick up that one. It looks like it missed one, but I can just get that one. Okay, so it did a pretty good job of removing those for us. Okay. Now I'm going to do some denoise, and I'm just going to zoom into about 50% here because I want to apply this to the sky. Okay, so I'm just going to apply this denoise fairly heavily because I want to really get rid of this pixelation in the sky. Let's see if that's doing it. Yeah, that's not bad. And I might even have to take this one all the way and then come back and do it again. Okay, okay, now we're getting somewhere. Okay, but it's making the image blurry. Can you see that? So I want to just apply it to the sky. So that's where the AI masking comes in. And we're going to select the sky and see how we do. I am not squeezing in any Photoshop today, Anne. We're just doing Luminar today. I may do some Photoshop with the Lightroom days when we alternate between here and Lightroom, because Lightroom users generally also have Photoshop. So I'm not squeezing any Photoshop in today. Okay, so now you can see that the denoise is only applying to the sky. Okay, and I'm going to copy it, because what I'm going to do is I want to do some details, and I'm going to add some details because that's going to give me some nice detail in the rock and some sharpening, but I don't want it in the sky. So I'm going to paste that mask, okay, and then just invert it. I could have done the same thing and used the AI and then inverted it, but this was quicker. So now I'm just adding some sharpening. And I think I want to use the dramatic as well. So dramatic gives you something to play with in terms of, I love this tool for lowering the saturation kind of and making it almost like partial black and white. And I don't want it so much on the sky again. So I definitely want to darken this one. And I'm literally just sort of playing around. Okay, so mask, paste it, invert it. Oops, nope, I had it right the first time. Okay, so now I'm just adding that to the foreground. Let's do a vignette. The other thing you can do when you're dealing with an image like this that has a lot of noise is to just go with it. Right? So we could leave the noise and just add some more. Right? I think this one would actually make a nice black and white image as well, especially with some grain. Okay, so now we've got black and white, right? There's that grain again in the sky. Darken that. Get some contrast with the yellows. Okay, like so. See that? This is one where you can do a partial color. I'm not a fan of these, but if you want partial color, you can do black and white and then just slide these up a little bit. So you've got just faded out color. Okay. Maybe let's go to 20. So I'm just putting them all at about 20. I could have done desaturate, but when you do desaturate, you lose control of adjusting the brightness and darkness based on the original green tones of the colors. Okay. I'm just going to darken the green again now that I've seen it. Okay. That's pretty cool. Right. And as I mentioned, because the sky is grainy, let's just go with it and add some grain. Maybe not that much. And now the whole thing has some grain, so it blends a little bit better. Right? So does that not feel like an appropriate type of edit for a Scottish, I'm guessing Scottish, castle on the moors? Okay, and it brought out the dramatic sky that was already there. Okay, and again, if we're getting too much grain in the sky because we're pulling it to the nth degree and we don't want to add grain, well, we could also replace it. Right? So once again, let's see what happens if we pick a sky. I'm going to go to the dramatic skies because I know there's one inside here that's really, that comes with Luminar. And where is it? I think it's this one. It's like stormy, right? Okay, so see how there's a little bit of the original sky showing. So I have to play with these sliders a little bit to get rid of it. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm not crazy about the fact that there's the sun in here. Let's see if there's another one. Please, one thing, please avoid this guy at all costs. I see that one in so many pictures, and it's just so same as everybody else's. Let me see if I've got another one. Oh, there's a lightning one. I've got some lightning shots. This is a set that I got from somebody else, so we could definitely play with some stormy clouds that way. Well, that's pretty cool. Hey, that's pretty cool. I have to say, that's pretty cool. I kind of like it. Let's make it even darker. So again, all things we can play with. But look at how nice the sky blends here. So I have full confidence that they will be able to fix the masking AI in terms of getting it more accurate. Okay. Oh, flip it so that the strike is hitting the castle. Oops. I miss all your comments. Castle is much more inviting. Bye, Trish. We'll catch you next time. Macbeth's castle. Like the drama. Okay, let's go back. I can add it again. Let's see. Where's that one? Is it this one? That's not bad. Was it? I think it was this one. There we go. There we go. That's the one. How's that? Let's just get that. Fix the gaps. There we go. Still a little bit of halo. Can you see what I'm seeing there? It's like there's a little bit of the original sky still there. And I'm just trying to make it blend a little better. Yeah, right in here. Can you see that? So these sliders here make a big difference. Okay. Yeah, it's coming over the building now. Let's just see. I could mask this one as well, so it's not affecting the... think it's not overwriting the original image as much as I would like, but it's not too bad. It looks realistic. It looks believable. We could just mask out the castle. So there we go. Right. One thing I wish we could do is, because I applied this black and white below the sky, I wish I could change the order. Okay. I wish I could put this black and white one above it. So I'm actually going to trash it and then go reapply it above so that it applies to the lightning as well. Okay, so I'm going to convert to black and white, put them all at 20 or so like I did before. And then I can adjust the brightness. How's that? Frankenstein-esque. Thor. Aha. Somebody's watching, is that Marvel movies? We went to see Doctor Strange the other day. Anybody seen Doctor Strange as a side note? Anybody superhero fan? The yellow area in the sky. Is that the one that I had on before? Or is there still a part that's not blending in here? So I have to just play with these sliders to make it blend right in here, right? So it's these, yeah, see there? See what that's doing? Close gaps. If I get rid of it, and I think just put it down a little bit lower. Yeah, see? Oh, look at that. That's interesting. I wish we could tilt the sky. In Luminar AI, we can actually rotate it, and that's something that we've all been asking for in terms of we want that back. We want that back from Skylum because it would be really helpful to be able to rotate in this case. But you can see that the original sky is still partly there, right? It's covering it, but not completely. But they kind of blend in together. If you don't like that yellow, we can definitely get rid of some of the yellow, right? How's that? We could probably even go and add a LUT and go with something that's really funky as well, right? Take me a while to find something. Do I still have my sheet open? Yes, I do. Let's see, something that's got some fun colors and some contrast. Genius is kind of nice. I know Auckland usually goes off the chart in terms of weird colors, I have to say. Let's try maybe Tokyo. Oh, yeah. Tokyo is kind of nice. That's nice too. Let's try LA. I know LA gives it kind of a 30s feel. I kind of like this one at the bottom. Does it feel apocalyptic now? Color blends a little better, doesn't it? Yeah. Highlander. Yes, Highlander. Marvel. Yes. Bye, Sheila. Yes, definitely could be Highlander. Or Outlander, actually. Outlander is the new show. All right. So I think that we've done some really cool things with this. Didn't expect to take it here, but it's kind of cool. So I just want to remind you, if you are new here, oops, not this one. Let's go to this one, to please submit your images, and I could be doing your images 2 weeks from now. So we are alternating. Next week will be Lightroom, and I'm actually working on having a guest come next week. So we'll actually be working on each other's images. So Anne, if you're still watching, Dan is going to be joining me, and he's going to edit my images, and I'm going to edit his using Lightroom. So I'm interested to see how that goes. I've got to pick a few images to send to him. So send in your images for 2 weeks from now for Luminar. And if you'd like to just tune in next week and watch us, even if you don't use Lightroom, it's going to be a fun one to watch because it's going to be two pros editing each other's images kind of head to head. So I'm going to do my image and then he's going to do the same image and we'll see what happens. Okay. And if you are not already a student in this course and you want to learn more about Luminar Neo, just go ahead to this URL, completeneocourse.com, and you can check out our Luminar Neo course. We actually have 2 lessons that are viewable for free if you want to just check those out. Daniel is one of my tour leaders that I was working with on past tours and has been with us on a few different ones. So she knows Daniel. Yeah. So Daniel is a photographer in Florida. He's from Argentina, but he lives in Miami. So he's going to be joining me next week. So that's it for this week. Thank you for sticking around until the end. We'll be back same time next Wednesday doing Lightroom. Take care.